Welcome back to SportsLine. 615-737-7767 is the number to call. We're talking about Ken Whisenhunt getting fired. Who do you want, Titans fans, to be your next head coach? And don't say Nick Saban. And don't say Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning's not going to be a head coach. He might be a front office guy. He's not going to be a head coach anywhere, anytime. Mark my words, book it. You know, the hours head coaches have to put in, the time they have to spend away from their families. I just don't think Peyton's that kind of guy. He's put in enough work in his career. All right, let's find out what Eddie has to say as we go back to the phones. Eddie, good evening. You're on SportsLine.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
Good, man. What's happening?
I'm not a big Titan fan. I'm going to be straight to the point.
Okay.
I'm originally from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I remember years ago down there in Tampa, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, let's be honest, they stunk.
They were terrible.
But when they brought Tony Dungy in there, the whole scenario changed.
You know what he did, Eddie? He changed the culture. Now, there was still some work to do. Their defense was great. Their offense needed some work. Gruden got in there and things got better. But you're right. Tony Dungy changed the culture of that franchise. You know, when you bring in guys like Sapp and you bring in guys like Brooks and John Lynch, who was already there, to get him to buy into the program. You're absolutely 100% right.
And when they brought Mike Allstott in, I mean, Lord, let me tell you what, Tampa Bay, or the NFL hadn't seen an offense click like that team did. What happened with Tony Dungy, and this is what the Tampa Tribune put out, was there was a little bit of discourse between Tony Dungy and the Glazers who own the Buccaneers. And then they went out and spent some money, and they brought in a firecracker from Oakland.
Yeah, they traded for John Gruden. They actually made a trade for him. You know, and there was actually Dungy and the Glazers, and also Sapp kind of led a revolt with the defensive players against the offensive players because if you'll recall, that offense, yeah, they had Allstott, they had Warwick Dunn, they had Bert Emanuel, and they had some decent receivers, but they weren't really moving the ball that well, and they relied probably too heavily on their defense. And I know Sapp was kind of the ringleader of a revolt against the offense, and that probably had something to do with it as well. But look, I think I get the point you're trying to make. It's the fact that, you know, you have to change the culture. I look at teams like the Cleveland Browns, the Buffalo Bills, and the Tennessee Titans, teams that haven't won in a while, the New York Jets.
Exactly.
There's a problem with the culture. Now, the teams that have the best kind of culture, the Patriots, the Steelers, the Giants most years, even though they're struggling a little bit, these organizations that have that stability, that have been around for a long time, and they have, like I talked about earlier, that identity. It doesn't matter who the GM is, doesn't matter who the coach is. The ownership group says, this is what we are. If you coach or GM for my team, this is what we want.
And I agree with that, and I agree with what you said. A successful football team has to have an identity.
Yep.
The Titans, for them to be successful, and I'm going to tell you, they've got the quarterback, but they need to build around that quarterback, and they're going to need a coach that is full of fire and brim and can take it to the house. And until the Titans get off the pocketbook and hire them a quality coach. And no, we ain't talking about Peyton Manning or Nick Saban or any of them other guys.
Right.
They're going to have to go shopping. And it ain't going to be this year, but they need to get somebody for next year. Because I'm going to tell you, the Titans has got a defense that's coming around, and they're going to be probably the first thing that comes out like a red flag. But they need to have a companion called offense. And until they get that, the Titans are going to be what you see right now. And on that note, you have a great day, brother, and I enjoy your show.
Eddie, thanks so much for calling. Wow, Eddie he took the words right out of my mouth. It's about identity, and it's about culture, and he seems to get it. Let's find out what Chad has to say. Good evening, Chad. You're on SportsLine.
Yeah, man, I'd like to see John Gruden hired as a coach.
Man, it's going to take a lot of money. He's pretty comfortable in that Monday Night Football booth. He makes a ton of money. He's never wrong. You know, I think as time goes by, guys like Bill Cowher and guys like John Gruden, when they realize, look, I'm making about as much as I made when I was a head coach. It's seasonal work. It's less hours, and I can say what I want and never be wrong and never be criticized. It's going to be tough to lure one of those guys away from the broadcast booth.
I understand. I just think we need somebody. I mean, our defense looks like it's set. You know, I think we need a good offensive-minded coach. I know they usually like to bring in their own defensive guys, but I mean, I think, and something else, I keep hearing, about the offense, but why do I never hear nothing about the offensive line coach? I mean, is he not doing his job, or do we need a new offensive line coach? Or
well, again, I think that goes back to what I said earlier. You need an identity. Your offensive line has to have an identity. And once you do that, you can bring in the right coach, whether it's Bostad, whether it's whoever you want to bring in. The fact that Ken Wisenhunt, in my opinion, did not establish an offensive identity in the time that he was here, that puts a lot of pressure on everybody. Yeah, I understand it's his offense and he's calling the plays, but that puts a lot of pressure on your assistant coaches because you don't know from week to week what kind of game it's going to be. And your players aren't always prepared. And I think that's a big problem with what we have with the offensive line because I still think there's talent there. There's high draft picks on that offensive line, and they're all young. Schwenke's young. I think he's going to be good. Warmack, he needs to pick it up, but I'm not ready to give up on him yet. They got rid of Andy Levitre. Taylor Lewan's going to be your left tackle for the next decade plus. There's talent there. But, again, it's about identity.
I agree, but I also think we need at least one already established offensive lineman instead of having all young ones. I think they need one in there that's already established as a good offensive lineman, to kind of lead the pack instead of having all young guys on there.
Well, I mean, there's pros and cons of that. I kind of like the idea of bringing in a young offensive line and letting them grow together and build chemistry. The Giants did that in Eli Manning's first few years, and they were able to establish themselves as a running team, took a lot of pressure off Eli Manning, and they wound up winning a Super Bowl. But I see your point. I mean, I think that's what they thought Michael Orr would be, but obviously that didn't work out. I think that's what they thought Levitre would be, even though he's a young veteran, still a veteran, but that didn't work out. And now, I mean, the interior, I think Patazzi's going to be a pretty decent right tackle. So now you've got from left to right, you're talking, Lawan all the way to Patazzi with Schwenke at center when he comes back healthy, Warmack at the one guard, and, right now Byron Bell at the other guard. It's a good nucleus there. But if you get them to come together and say, okay, this is what we're going to be as an offensive line, come hell or high water at the end of the day, this is what we are, I think you'll see improvement from that group. And don't be surprised if you see a lot more offense production now that Jason Michael is completely in charge and he doesn't have to answer the Ken Wisenhunt. Just a hunch. But we thank you for the call. And we keep it going with the phone calls, 615-737-7767. Let's check out Dante online, too. What's up, Dante?
How you doing?
I'm doing great. What's on your mind tonight?
What's on my mind is about stretching that field, man. I've been a Titans fan since a little kid, and I definitely agree with the last two callers on the defense. We definitely got some good things going on right there with identity, but I think Casey needs someone else on the line that's as capable as he is on the interior. I know Brian Orakpo out there is doing his job pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Morgan's had a pretty good season, a little up and down, but he's played pretty well.
Yeah. And as far as Marcus Mariota, I think he did a wonderful job in the opening game. And it's really been a heartbreaking season because we all expected so much after that game.
Yeah.
But I think they need to start stretching the field a little bit more. And,
I agree with you. But in order to do that, Justin Hunter's got to stop dropping passes. Okay? I mean, that's what it starts. I mean, he's the guy that's supposed to be take the top off the defense, deep threat. And when you're wide open for at least a 45-yard gain, you got to hold on to the football. Justin Hunter has been, I'm going to say it, he's been a huge disappointment for the Tennessee Titans. You remember, they traded up to get this guy. They put a lot into this guy, and he hasn't produced. And that's part of your problems right there. Kendall Wright's not a deep threat. He's an outstanding slot receiver, short to intermediate routes, especially in the red zone. Delaney Walker, same thing. He's not a deep threat at tight end, although he moves a lot better than most tight ends in the league. Justin Hunter's the guy that you need to be that deep threat guy, and he hasn't done it.
Yeah, he hasn't stepped up, man. He was like a baby fumbling with candy, man, out there. I'm almost disgusted because I had so much, faith in him doing a good job. I'm kind of turning towards DGB now. I know he's not had too many good games, but that comes back to the coaching again, I believe. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, and thanks for the call. A lot of that's on DGB. From what I've heard, he's had a hard time picking up the offense, running crisp routes, understanding, recognizing coverage. He's a rookie, and plus he hasn't played in over a year. So I think the potential is there, but he's got to learn the offense, and he's got to learn. He's a pretty good red zone target, but he needs to learn, what goes on between the 20s as well. All right, if you're on hold, I want you to stay there. We want to get everybody in tonight. We want to get your thoughts. Ken Wisnon out, Mike Mularkey in for now. Do you want to go with Mularkey? Do you want somebody else? What kind of coach do you want for the Tennessee Titans? Also, don't forget Jason Wolf, bottom of the hour from the Tennessean, who is the beat writer for the Tennessee Titans. He will join us as well. We'll get to all that and more next here on SportsLine.